My friends from Powercom and trainee engineers, I am sure that all the words of praise given by my predecessor, I did not deserve it. And whatever I wanted to do, I have yet to attain. I think one of my prime duties is to give some sort of orientation course to the new trainee engineers, and the subject is semi legal, and I would say it would appear to be difficult to understand, but still I feel that you should have a good idea of the organization you have joined and what is expected in the future. Now friends, I will start from the beginning. For us engineers, the power sector starts with the Electricity Supply Act 1948. As the date indicates, this was one of the first legislations passed by the newly independent India. 1947 was the independence, 1948 was the act. And the Electricity Act created the state electricity boards of the country. So this was the legislation on the basis of which the electricity boards of the country were formed, including Punjab State Electricity Board. Of course, the next legislation came in 2003 with the Electricity Act 2003. But before that, I would like to give some background of the Electricity Act 1948. Now friends, I will go into some of the details which may seem complicated or difficult, but even then I will try to make an attempt to explain the issues. The Electricity Act, Supply Act 1948, one of the major problems was that the finances of the state electricity boards across the country, finances were not healthy at all, and tariffs were also not commensurate to the expenditures incurred. Throughout the electricity sector, there is one parameter which is the difference between the gap between cost of supply and the revenue recovered, the gap between revenue and cost. And right from the beginning, the revenue has not been able to cover the cost of supply. And it was then realized that while the electricity boards under the 48 Act had the power to formulate and declare the tariffs almost across the country, they never did it. And the result was, because the SEB would look to the state government for approval and the state government would never agree. They will say, naturally, tariff बढ़ाओगे तो public कहाँ जाएगी? So due to those effects, the tariffs were not revised commensurate with the expenditures. And result was of cross subsidies, where the higher revenue consumers were made to pay for the gap incurred by the lower revenue consumers. So these were the issues due to which the financial condition of the SEBs under Electricity Supply Act 48 was not at all healthy. And it was felt that a new bill should be introduced by which at least this discrepancy, this unbalance can be corrected. So friends, this was the background in which the Electricity Act 2003 was passed. So there was a huge time gap between 1948 legislation and 2003 regulation. And always the question would arise, where was the need for a new legislation? Because the new legislation of 2003 had several features which were not to the liking of the engineers. First of all, the 2003 legislation practically dismantled the entire electricity board structure totally and replaced with these, what you are seeing now, the power companies. But I would like to give one more factor, that under the 2003 legislation, they tried to make tariff determination independent of the government. It was felt that under the 48 legislation, the electricity boards of the states were not able to revise the tariffs to meet the expenditures, and that was the reason for the poor condition of the state electricity boards. So under the 2003 Act, one major new factor which was introduced, state regulatory commissions, central regulatory commissions, like that, for making tariff matters independent of government pressures. And the state regulatory commissions were given the powers to decide the tariffs. So this is the starting point. One other very important parameter I missed out: the Electricity Supply Act 1948 had the provision that every year the state can revise the tariff so as to achieve 0.3% surplus. So the law stipulated, the act stated that every year the tariff must be increased so that the state electricity board can attain 3% surplus, 3% of the fixed assets of the board. Again, almost 100% of the electricity boards in the country did not implement this provision of the law. When you have a provision in the Electricity Act 48, it becomes a law, and every authority has to required to implement it, but practically nobody did. So that is why the governments thought that we should come up with the 2003 Act. Now, apart from that, there is another feature of the legislations, particularly the later legislation which came, which was the provision of tariff policy and national electricity plan. That I'll come to later. So friends, first of all, I would like to explain in detail how and why the legislation was introduced to bring up the Electricity Act 2003, by which the state electricity boards were practically dismantled. So friends, as I said, it is a tough subject. It is maybe at a first instance difficult to comprehend, but still I will try to explain how and why things developed. I hope that you will listen with some patience, because the issues are quite difficult. With the 2003 Act, there were many legal cases, disputes, because the 2003 Act had a specific requirement that you have three separate bodies: the State Regulatory Commission, the Central Regulatory Commission, and the Appellate Tribunal for Electricity. This was the new framework by which the governments hoped to solve the legal disputes associated with electricity and tariff matters. So remember this, the three-stage process: State Regulatory Commission, Central Regulatory Commission, Appellate Tribunal for Electricity. Now with that in background, there was a landmark judgment, and finally after the Appellate Tribunal comes the Supreme Court. So one thing is there, that you don't have to go through the normal courts where huge delays are occurring and decisions are not taken. So it was a streamlined procedure that you don't have to knock the doors of the high courts for various matters related to electricity tariff. You have a streamlined functioning state regulator, central regulator, appellate tribunal, and Supreme Court. Supreme Court is the final. Now there was one landmark judgment which went up to the Supreme Court, and that landmark judgment became the law of the land. Wherever it's common throughout the country that whatever decision is finally taken up by the Supreme Court becomes practically the law of the land. That becomes the law. So there was a landmark judgment regarding the tariff of a mega thermal plant located in Gujarat. Tata Mundra thermal station with capacity of 4000 megawatts, coastal station, and the dispute was, I'll go little back into the background to explain the background of the dispute. In the Electricity Act 2003, there is a provision of tariff determination by two independent procedures. One is cost plus procedure, and second is competitive bidding procedure. Two entirely different routes for determination of tariff. The cost plus means that the State Electricity Board, who wants to set up a thermal plant or any expenditure, files a petition before the state regulator saying that I want to set up this plant or this asset or this line or whatever it is, and you please approve the capital cost so that I can construct that plant or asset and develop my system. That is cost plus, where the State Regulatory Commission has the power and the jurisdiction to determine the justified cost. Second, totally different procedure, competitive bidding. Competitive bidding is particularly relevant for setting up of new thermal or hydropower stations. There what happens, the agency that wants to set up a plant issues a tender notice, and once that tender notice is issued, the bids are invited, and ultimately the lowest bidder gets the award of the project, and then he goes ahead and constructs that I have got this bid, I am constructing this plant, my cost is like this, and that bid tariff which I have bid, I will follow it. So this was the second alternative. Government of India at that time, particularly the then Secretary Power, Government of India, he was a quite outstanding engineer from NTPC who was later on Secretary Power, Engineer R.V. Shahi. He said that we should go in for adopting the competitive bidding procedure so as to accelerate the setting up of plants and ensure reasonable tariffs. So that was his brainwave, I would say, or idea, of course, within the act, to build new plants through competitive bidding. At that time, Ministry of Power had decided to set up 4 UMPPs, ultra mega power plants, each of 4000 megawatts thermal, so that those can be awarded through competitive bidding, and so that the power shortage of the country can be met. This was the idea. So that time it was around 2006 or 2007. You remember 2003 the act came. The 4 projects which were awarded under competitive bidding. Number 1, UMPP Sasan in Madhya Pradesh, 4000 megawatts. UMPP Mundra on the coast of Gujarat, 4000 megawatts. UMPP on the coast of Andhra, 4000 megawatts, and Tilaiya in Jharkhand. So out of these plants, the plant at Mundra and Krishnapatnam were the coastal power stations. At Sasan, it was Pit Head Thermal Station, and similarly Tilaiya, which is located in Jharkhand, it was a pit head thermal station. Now you see the philosophy of it, that the justification for a pit head thermal station is that you are locating the power station right on the source of the coal mine, and he has to just get the coal mined and feed it into the plant and get the power generated at minimum cost. Pit head station has the advantage, practically saying, that transportation cost of fuel is zero, practically zero, because the location of the plant is right next to the coal mine. So Sasan was there, it was taken up for execution. For the coastal power stations, the policy of the Government of India was that import of coal from other countries can be cheaper and more economical if the power station is located at the coast itself next to a port, and you import the coal by ship, unload it and straight away feed it to the power station. So this was the philosophy. Out of the 4 stations which were initially approved, 2 were taken up for bidding, 2, and 2 were still pending. The 2 stations taken up for bidding was number 1 Sasan, Madhya Pradesh near Singrauli, and second was Mundra on the coast of Gujarat. The tariff of Sasan UMPP, you may believe it or not, the tariff was 1 rupee 19 paisa per unit. 1 rupee 19 paisa per unit. This was the result of competitive bidding, because whoever put a bid for that project, he knew that I am going to get the coal right from the project site itself, and my cost of generation will go down. So practically it will be the fixed cost only which will be mattering more. So Reliance Infra, not Reliance Mukesh, Reliance Infra means Reliance of Anil Ambani. They submitted the bid for Sasan, 1 rupee 19 paisa per unit, and they were awarded that project along with the matching coal mine. For Mundra, the lowest bid was Tata, and that bid was 2 rupees 26 paisa, because it is well understood that he has to import the coal from other countries, he has to face that extra expenditure, and only then he can generate the power. Whereas a pit head thermal station, the coal is right there next door to the powerhouse. So that is why here the bid was 119. For Mundra it was 226. 2 rupees 26 paisa per unit for 4000 megawatt Mundra coastal power station. The Sasan station was commissioned and was put on generation. Similarly, in the case of coastal Mundra, it was constructed by Tatas, 5 units of 800 megawatts each, 4000 megawatts. So these were the two out of the 4 bid, 2 came up, Sasan and Mundra, while the dispute started practically from the beginning. The dispute started like this in case of coastal Gujarat station, that he had bid a rate of 2 rupees 26 paisa per unit, and he said that over 25 years I will generate the power at this tariff and give it to the beneficiaries. That bid was sometimes in 2008 or 7 or 8, 2007 or 2008. What happened? Tata was to source the power from Indonesia because coastal station tha, higher rate tha. He was to get the power from Indonesia, and there Indonesian coal mines may he had some share. So on the base of that, naturally, because when you are bidding you have to see your source of coal, so he had put the rate of 226. 2008 he put the bid. The power station had practically just started generating, and he was giving it at power at the rate of 226 when the government of Indonesia passed a law by which the cost of price of coal went up. They said that we will allow export of coal only if the coal is at a higher rate matching with the international rate of coal. So that was a change of the law, and immediately the impact was on Tata Mundra. He was having the hardship that he had bid for a certain rate of coal at 226, and now with the increased price of coal it would not be possible to supply the coal, the electricity at that rate. So as it happened, this issue went up. He filed a petition before Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. Then this is the background. I am not at fault. I should be allowed to charge the rate corresponding to the higher rate of coal. It is not my fault. It तो internationally हो गया. And when the case went before CERC, naturally the states who had a share in that, including Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan and Gujarat, they said nothing doing. He has put a bid for 25 years and this is the bid. He cannot deny it, and there is no escape. He has to supply the power at the rate of the bid. This was the dispute. 25 years he has put the bid. On that basis of 25 years bid, he was awarded the project. On that basis he constructed the project, and now he says no, I should be allowed a higher rate. This was the dispute. Now this case went before the Supreme Court of India, because at the rate of at the door of CERC or appellate tribunal, there was no solution. The states would never agree for a higher rate. Why? They will say you give it as per the PPA. Now this gentleman Tata went to the Supreme Court. There the issue was based on contracts and the law of contracts. The case was heard by the Supreme Court Judge Rohinton Nariman. And Rohinton Nariman is one of the most learned and analytical judges of the entire Supreme Court. Of course, now he is retired, but at that time, we had the good luck that he was dealing with that case. He analyzed the power purchase agreement, and there was two clauses which were very important. One is force majeure. Force majeure means a superior force or a law, and second is change of law. So under both of these clauses which were there in the PPA, he says, I only wanted interpretation. I have been allowed in the PPA to claim by this force majeure and change of law clauses. That entire issue was analyzed threadbare by the Justice Rohinton Nariman, whose father Fali S. Nariman was one of the outstanding judges of the entire country. And Justice Nariman came to the conclusion, on the basis of so many other earlier judgments, that change of law means change of Indian law. Change of foreign law cannot be covered under the clause of change in law. So this was the basic judgment given by Justice Nariman, and it was concluded in the favor of the states, that he is to give the power to the states at the rate of his bid, and no extra would be allowed on account of change in law. Now, after that, you see, this was a major victory. After that, Tata Mundra, he tried whatever he could do. He went to all the advocates he could find, but they said, this judgment, you go before any judge, it cannot be overturned. You have to comply with it. And they said there is no way out. Naturally, the first, response would be naturally that agar ye judgment I should try to get another judgment by some other court. They said nothing doing, you forget it. ये जस्टिस नारीमान का है, इसको आप बदल नहीं सकोगे. Then these people decided to have a 3-member committee to review the entire issue. Now, it was ordered by the state of Gujarat that ये judgment तो आ गई है, तो how to overturn it or how to get away from it, we have a 3-member committee wherein one will be a retired judge of the Supreme Court, a retired judge. Number 2 will be a retired deputy governor of the Reserve Bank, and the third will be a retired chairman of CERC. 3 top members of that committee, they have tried to get relief or allowance for higher rate, but they have not yet succeeded. So that is how one competitive bidding process under UMPP could not be successfully executed because of this interpretation of change in law. And judge to dekhega legally. He said this is no way out. If it was the increase in Indian rate, we could have allowed it. But for foreign rate of coal, we cannot allow it. So that was the net result. Now, where I was coming to, in that judgment of Ultra Mega Mundra, there were several parties who were contesting on behalf of the consumers, and their plea was the plea of all the states that whatever has been given under the bid, you have to supply it and you cannot run away from it. In the judgment issued by Justice Nariman, Rohinton Nariman, he has analyzed the background of why the new Electricity Act was passed, and he has gone into the historical background of how the Electricity Act 1948 was changed under the 2003 Act, and only then he could go, okay, what is the meaning of this change of law clause. So this is an analysis by Justice Nariman on the case of Mundra Tata, and one of the persons who was contesting the case, it was a public group located in Pune. The name of that group is Prayas, because Maharashtra was one of the shareholders, partners of having a share in Mundra. So there was an interested party, Prayas Pune. So this judgment by Justice Nariman was on the basis of pleading by Prayas Pune, and they were known by the title of Energy Watchdog. Energy Watchdog. Watchdog is the guard dog which guards a certain asset. So the judgment in the Energy Watchdog case was issued on 11th of April 2017. 11 April 2017. And I will now read out to you that portion of this judgment in which the judge has analyzed that what were the problems with the Electricity Act 1948, due to which the new act is coming up. So the background of this case is that it was if 2003 Act had been passed, because this was 11/4/2017. The Electricity Act had been passed in 2003. So he has now analyzed what were the reasons and justifications for the Electricity Act to have been amended, and I think that will be of great relevance to all the state electricity boards of the country. So I think it will require a little bit of your patience, but I think you must understand it and try to, I'll give you the details also. Now I am going to read out 2 or 3 pages only, 2 or 3 pages from that judgment of Justice Nariman. Relevant provisions of the Electricity Act 2003, because this is on 11/4/2017. Relevant provisions of the Electricity Act 2003. Now remember, this is a judgment by that judge of the Supreme Court. The 2003, now this is because what I can explain, he can do 100 times better. The 2003 Act did away with, dismantled the 3 earlier statutes in which a completely different regime for generation and supply of electricity was provided for, namely the old acts which were dismantled: Indian Electricity Act 1910, Electricity Supply Act 1948, and Electricity Regulatory Commissions Act 1998. The Electricity Regulatory Commissions Act had come for the setting up of CERC and State Electricity Regulatory Boards. Now, the statement of objects and reasons of this Act reads as follows. Now, this is the most important part, that when a new legislation is passed, it has to go to Parliament and be approved in Parliament. You have to give the statement of objects and reasons why the new legislation is being passed. So here was the case where the 1948 Act was to be replaced by the 2003 Act, and that was to be sent to the Parliament as a bill, and it was only on 6th of June 2003 that the bill was passed. So 2003 June the new Act came into force, and it is under that bill that all this is happening. But he is saying why that bill was passed. This is the great. The statement of objects and reasons of this Act reads as follows. It is only 2 or 3 pages, but you must try to understand. I will give you the copies also when required. The electricity supply industry in India is presently governed by 3 enactments, namely the Indian Electricity Act 1910, Electricity Supply Act 1948, and the Electricity Regulatory Commissions Act 1998. The Electricity Act 1910 created the basic framework for the electric supply industry in India, which was in its infancy. The Act envisaged growth of electricity through private licensees. Accordingly, it provided for licensees who could control supply to a specified area. It created the legal framework for laying down of wires and other works. The Electricity Supply Act 1948 mandated the creation of a state electricity board. The State Electricity Board has the responsibility of arranging supply of electricity in the state. It was felt that electrification, which was limited to cities, needs to be extended rapidly, and the state should step in to shoulder this responsibility through the state electricity boards. So this was the justification why the state electricity boards were formed under the Electricity Supply Act 48. Accordingly, the state electricity boards, through successive 5-year plans, undertook rapid growth expansion by utilizing planned funds. Now, here is where the problem starts. Over a period of time, the performance of SEBs has deteriorated substantially on account of various factors. For instance, though power to fix tariffs vests with the state electricity boards, they have generally been unable to take decisions on tariffs in a professional and independent manner, and tariff determination in practice has been done by the state governments. Cross subsidies have reached unsustainable levels. To address this issue and to provide for distancing of government from determination of tariffs, the Electricity Regulatory Commission Act was enacted in 1998. It created Central Electricity Regulatory Commission and the enabling provision through which the state governments can create a State Electricity Regulatory Commission. 16 states have so far created the state SERCs. Then, starting with he given the various states: Odisha, Karnataka, Rajasthan, this and that. With the policy of encouraging private sector participation in generation, transmission, and distribution, and the objective of distancing of regulatory responsibilities from the government to the regulatory commissions. The need for harmonizing and rationalizing the provision of the Act 1910 and the Electricity Supply Act 48 and the Electricity Regulation Commission Act 1998, a new self-contained comprehensive legislation arose. Accordingly, it became necessary to enact a new legislation for regulating the electricity supply industry in the country, which would replace the existing laws, preserve its core features other than those relating to the existence of SEBs. There is also a need to provide for newer concepts like power trading, open access. There is also a need to obviate the requirement of each state to pass its own Reforms Act. The bill has progressive features and endeavors to strike the right balance between the current realities of the power sector. It gives the state enough flexibility to develop their power sector in the manner they consider appropriate. The electricity bill has been finalized after extensive discussions and consultations with the states and all other stakeholders. Then he says the main features of the bill are as follows. He gives the main features of the bill. And then he says the bill seeks to achieve the above objects. So this is what the judgment of the Supreme Court was in the Energy Watchdog case. On the basis of this judgment, the entire case was argued and decided in favor of the states. In the end, he says, this being the case, we are of the view that though change of Indonesian law would not qualify as a change of law under the guidelines issued read with the PPA, changes in Indian law certainly would. So net result of this judgment was that while change of Indonesian law is not allowed, if it had been a change in Indian law, it would have been allowed. So with this, the case was decided in favor of the state electricity boards. Now this is one case where the Supreme Court had to intervene and decide a dispute in the favor of the states. Now after that came this second instance of Sasan. The case of Sasan was a landmark case, and it was something which was practically unbelievable. What happened this Sasan was a company of Anil Ambani. And what happened, he had been given the award of the project Sasan, 6 units of 660 megawatts each, and one by one those units had to be commissioned. The sharing of power from Sasan in percentage: Madhya Pradesh 37.5%, Punjab 15%, UP 12%, Delhi 11%, Haryana 11%, Rajasthan 10%, Uttarakhand 2.5%. So this was an interstate generating station with major beneficiary of Madhya Pradesh 37.5%, Punjab 15%, and he was to commission the units one by one. Now what happens when you give a bid for 25 years tariff? The most critical point is which is the date of operation of the first unit, because you see you have a 25 years, a tariff table of 25 years, and the first year is defined at the year on which the first unit of that powerhouse is commissioned. And once that date is fixed, then वो 25 years का tariff चलेगा. So commissioning of the first powerhouse, first unit, is the critical date for implementing a competitively bid tariff of 25 years. 25 साल का मीटर कब शुरू होता है? जब पहला यूनिट चलेगा. What happened? The power purchase agreement. Some of the factors here are, you see, very, very alarming. The first unit, or the condition for commissioning of the first unit, was when the unit is demonstrated to have completed a trial run of continuous operation for 72 hours at 95% capacity. So, a power purchase agreement में ये कंडीशन लिखी हुई है कि टैरिफ तब शुरू होगा जब पहला यूनिट 72 आवर्स कंटिन्यूस चलेगा and load of 95% is achieved continuously. Now what happened? The tariff for Sasan was such that first 2 years the tariff was very low. जो उसने बिड डाला है, first year was 69 paisa, second year was 70 paisa, and subsequent years it was around 1 rupee 31 paisa per unit, 131. So that was the bid he had put. तो ये सारा कुछ चलेगा तब with the commissioning of the first unit. This was the condition. Now what happened? He tried to commission that unit within 31st March 2006. He tried. 2006 में अगर वो commission करता means by 31/3/2006 his tariff का मीटर चल जाता है. But if it does not, then it goes to the next year. Naturally वो तो tariff में था ही था. What happened? And this is how the private sector people work. His unit was not ready for commissioning. Unit number 3 he was to commission. Uska unit तैयार नहीं था. It was not ready for full generation. Even then, he tried to declare the commercial operation of this unit with the only objective कि मैं एक बार इसको डिक्लेयर कर दूं, फिर मेरा टैरिफ का मीटर चल जाएगा. You see how a private sector company works or thinks that मेरा पैसा कब शुरू होगा आना, मेरा टैरिफ का मीटर कब चलेगा, जब पहला यूनिट कमीशन होगा. So what happened, his first unit was not at all ready. अब उधर 31 मार्च डेट आ रही थी. So and the regulatory, the regional load dispatch center RLDC was RLDC Mumbai, because this was in Madhya Pradesh, means western grid. तो यूनिट तैयार नहीं था. 31 मार्च आ रहा था. एंड व्हाट ही डिड, दैट यूनिट, योर PPA says 95% 72 hours continuous running. What he could achieve within those days just prior to 31st March, only 103 megawatts against a requirement of 95% of 660 megawatts, मतलब about 590 megawatts बनता है. 590 की जगह वो 110 पर या 103 पर he was trying to declare the commercial operation. There what happened, Western Region Load Dispatch Center, they said we cannot certify like this. You run it. उन्होंने तो सीधा जवाब दिया, वेस्टर्न रीजन, इट इज़ लाइक अ रीजनल, जैसे हमारा अबलोवाल है. RLDC said you run it for 72 hours, 95%, we will give you the certification, पर उससे पहले हम सर्टिफाई नहीं करेंगे. Then he tried, he rather approached the independent engineer. The independent engineer is an authority which is a part of the PPA, and whatever is the, you see, certification has to be done by that independent engineer. They went to the independent engineer, they said, वो उन्हीं का ही आदमी था. They said, you please certify. He says, naturally, he said, it is not possible for me to certify 590 megawatts when you are running at 110. सारा कुछ रिकॉर्ड में आ रहा है, सब कुछ डेटा में आ रहा है. This cannot be done. Then he said, okay, you certify that the unit has run at 101 megawatts. You see, private लोग किस crookedness से काम करते हैं. जब पता है कि 590 मेगावाट पे यूनिट सर्टिफाई होगा, कहता कोई नहीं, तो 110 या 103 मेगावाट पे सर्टिफाई कर दे. एंड दैट वी विल सी द फॉलो अप. उसने क्या किया, he certified that I, as independent engineer, I certify that this unit has operated at 103 megawatts for 72 hours. उसने इतना certify कर दिया. And he gave that certificate to the regional load dispatch center. And further, there was another provision that it should be a supercritical unit. So supercritical unit in thermal power stations is a unit which operates at 247 kg pressure. The steam pressure is 247. इसने सर्टिफाई किया 77. 247 is the requirement for a supercritical unit and he is certifying 77. तो दो चीज़ें हो गई, एक तो 95% नहीं रन किया, एक सुपर क्रिटिकल प्रेशर पे रन नहीं किया. एंड देन what I am only saying is to see the crookedness of these people. What they said, okay, certificate आ गया 77 kg वाला इंस्टेड ऑफ 247 और 95% की जगह वो जो 103 मेगावाट. देन दे वेंट टू ऑल द स्टेट इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बोर्ड्स. 5-6 कंज्यूमर्स थे, जैसे मैंने बताया मध्य प्रदेश, पंजाब, यूपी, दिल्ली, हरियाणा, राजस्थान एंड उत्तराखंड. दे सेड कि हमारा यूनिट तो तैयार था, बट वेस्टर्न रीजनल लोड डिस्पैच सेंटर डिड नॉट अलाउ अस टू इंक्रीज द लोड. So everyone knows that when a unit is running in a grid, he has to follow the instruction of Western Regional Load Dispatch Center, which is the authorized RLDC. तो ही इतना बड़ा झूठ बोला कि मेरा यूनिट तो तैयार था, WRLDC ने मुझे रोक दिया कि you do not increase your load, so you should not raise any objections. All the states said that we have never refused. Your unit was not ready and now you are trying to put the blame on WRLDC. So there were 2 or 3 मतलब जो उसने grounds for declaring commercial operation. Number 1 was that the unit they say was ready, but WRLDC ने मुझे रोक दिया. That is the way. So this thing went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court ने इस चीज़ को, rather before that we were telling all the other states, ये जो मैंने 5-6 states बताए हैं, कि you should not agree to the commercial operation of this unit at 103 megawatt. You should not agree to it. ये बहुत बड़ा फ्रॉड होगा, डोंट एग्री टू इट. ही वॉज लॉबिंग विद ऑल दी स्टेट्स. इतने सारे स्टेट हैं, मध्य प्रदेश, पंजाब, यूपी, दिल्ली, हरियाणा, राजस्थान, उत्तराखंड, कि आप इसको एग्री कर दो. दे सेड हाउ वी कैन एग्री. दे सेड अरे आप 103 मेगावाट को एग्री कर दो ना. दैट इज हाउ दे ट्राई टू ट्विस्ट इट. वी सेड कि तो जरा यूनिट 950 पे चलना है, मैं 103 पे एग्री कर लूँ. दे सेड वी ट्राई टू कन्विंस ऑल ऑफ देम, बट समहाउ दे हैड पुट ए लॉट ऑफ प्रेशर ऑन द स्टेट्स कि यू एग्री टू इट, यू एग्री टू इट. तो अल्टीमेटली व्हाट हैपेंड, दे सेड बिफोर सेंट्रल इलेक्ट्रिसिटी Regulatory Commission that states, उन्होंने तो कहा कई स्टेट से अप्रूवल ले ली, that states are approving 103 megawatts, तो you should agree to it. उधर there were some people from Central Electricity Authority, they said इतना बड़ा fraud I will not allow, it is not possible. So उसका स्टैंड लेने से CERC rejected the application of Sasan Unit 3. He went to appellate tribunal. Appellate tribunal का भी बंदा you can say practically इनकी जेब में था. They said that हम तो तैयार थे and these people have waived, relaxed the condition of COD. लो इतना बड़ा fraud again. None of the states had agreed for relaxing that condition of 95% and 72 hours running, किसी ने रिलैक्स नहीं किया था. से नहीं, those states have agreed to take the power at 103 megawatts, इसलिए आप इसको एग्री करो. स्टेट से शायद लिखवा लिया इसने कि 103 मेगावाट तो मुझे दो, स्टेट से ही लिख कर दे दिया भाई 103 मेगावाट एट ₹1.19 मैं लेने के लिए तैयार हूँ. वो क्वेश्चन इज 95% तूने देना था, 103 मेगावाट पे हाउ. एनीवे, तो दिस थिंग वाज वेवल ऑफ द कंडीशन. और सेकंड जो था मेन कंडीशन, दैट जो यूनिट सुपर क्रिटिकल में 247 kg प्रेशर पर चलना था, हाउ यू आर सर्टिफाइंग इट एट 77. तो इसके ऊपर दिस थिंग वेंट टू सुप्रीम कोर्ट. सुप्रीम कोर्ट में क्या हुआ, केस एप्लीकेशन लग गई इनकी शासन पावर की. देयर इज ए प्रोविजन दैट विद इन अ सर्टन नंबर ऑफ डेज द parties who want to appeal must file their appeal, otherwise it will become time barred. तो हम तो स्टेट्स को कह रहे थे, फ्रॉम ऑल इंडिया पावर इंजीनियर्स फेडरेशन वी टेलिंग ऑल द स्टेट्स डोंट एग्री टू इट, ये कंज्यूमर्स का भी तो ख्याल करो. वी वर टेलिंग ऑल द स्टेट्स, बट दिस मैन अनिल अंबानी was approaching all the states including पंजाब, हरियाणा, all of them, कि आप एग्री कर लो, 103 मेगावाट पे एग्री कर लो. तो वी वर सेइंग नहीं करना. एनीवे, तो ये जो अपील में जाने लगा ना, तो ही मैनिपुलेटेड विद ऑल दी बेनिफिशरीज. इतने सारे बेनिफिशरीज हैं, दोबारा बताऊं, मध्य प्रदेश, पंजाब, यूपी, दिल्ली, हरियाणा, राजस्थान एंड उत्तराखंड, सारों को एग्री करा गया. अरे तुम अपील मत डालो. वे दीज प्राइवेट पीपल एक्ट, क्रोकेडनेस, कि छोड़ो परे, अपील मत डालो, अपने आप वो रिजेक्ट होकर पिट जाएगी, टाइम बार हो जाएगी. सो दिस इज हाउ द प्राइवेट पीपल एक्ट. उन्होंने तकरीबन सारे स्टेट से ये एग्री करा लिया कि अपील भी छोड़ो, क्या करना है. वी वर हैविंग आवर मीटिंग ऑफ ऑल इंडिया पावर इंजीनियर्स फेडरेशन just 3 or 4 or 5 days before that deadline of filing the appeal. Our meeting was being held, ये actually हुआ हमारे साथ. That meeting was being held in Dehradun, All India Power Engineers Federation meeting in Dehradun. और उधर क्या हुआ, ऑल इंडिया फेडरेशन थी, वो मध्य प्रदेश वाले आए, अरे क्या बना तुम्हारी अपील का, यू आर द मेन शेयर होल्डर, हैव यू फाइल्ड द अपील. हमने तो पूछना था उनसे, तो फील्ड अपील डाली तुमने, यू आर द बिगेस्ट शेयर होल्डर 37%. कहते हैं हमें तो सरकार ने रोक दिया, द गवर्नमेंट हैज फॉरबिडन यू नॉट टू फाइल द अपील. तो बाकी लोगों से पूछा, सारों का यही जवाब हुआ दैट हम तो तैयार हैं पर गवर्नमेंट नहीं मान रही. देन व्हाट वी डिड, ये देहरादून की बात है, मीटिंग चल रही थी ऑल इंडिया फेडरेशन की, एंड 4 दिन तकरीबन बाकी थे फाइल करने के. आई टॉक टू दैट एडवोकेट जो हमारे कॉन्फिडेंस का था, दिल्ली का एडवोकेट, सीनियर एडवोकेट. मैंने कहा सर ये तो अपील ही नहीं फाइल हो रही, तो हम तो हार गए, शुरू से ही हार. कहता है आर यू विलिंग टू बिकम द पार्टी. ये एक्चुअली हुआ. वी सेड यस, you file the appeal on behalf of All India Power Engineers Federation. Let all the states go. ना करें, we don't bother. हम तो कर सकते हैं ना. तो we told him, he said मेरी अपील पूरी तैयार है, सिर्फ आपका नाम और पता ऐड करना है. We said I am coming to Delhi tomorrow and we will sign all your documents. You file the appeal. तो हुआ ऐसे ही. आई रश टू दिल्ली, वो अपील फाइल की गई. उसका अल्टीमेटली सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो ऑर्डर है, जजमेंट, उसमें जो ओपनिंग लाइन होती है, हु इज़ द एपेलेंट, हु इज़ द एपेलेंट, एपेलेंट ऑल इंडिया पावर इंजीनियर्स फेडरेशन. वर्सेस शासन पावर लिमिटेड एंड अदर्स। तो उसने मतलब है आवर अपील वाज फाइल्ड, इट वाज टेकन ऑन रिकॉर्ड, एंड व्हाट आवर एडवोकेट डिड, मतलब इतना तो चलता ही है ना, ही टेलीफोन ऑल द अदर स्टेट्स कि ठीक है आपने अपील नहीं डाली, हमने डाल दिया, और अब आपकी पोजीशन ख़राब हो जाएगी कि तुमने अपील क्यों नहीं डाली। ऑलमोस्ट ऑल द अदर स्टेट्स एक एक करके उन्होंने अपील फाइल की। यार ऑल इंडिया फेडरेशन ने अपील डाल दिया तो हम भी डालें, नहीं तो हम पीछे रह जाए, हमें गवर्नमेंट पूछी। सो दैट वाज हाउ दिस केस वाज ब्रॉट अप बिफोर द सुप्रीम कोर्ट। तो फाइनली ये हुआ कि एपीलेट ट्राइब्यूनल ने जो 2-3 ग्राउंड्स पर इनको फेवर किया था, वी हैड टू चैलेंज इट बिफोर द सुप्रीम कोर्ट। तो दे सेड, एपीलेट ने भी कहा दे हैव वेव्ड, उन्होंने अपना जो हक है ना वेव कर दिया, सरेंडर कर दिया। सो नाउ दे हैव नो ऑब्जेक्शन, तो आप हमारे फेवर में करो वेवल। तो वी सेड नहीं, हम तो वी आर ऑल्सो अ पार्टी, वी हैव नॉट वेव्ड, आप इसको डिसाइड करो। तो वेवल वाली पॉइंट को सुप्रीम कोर्ट रिजेक्टेड इट, ही सेड नथिंग डूइंग। जहां पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट इन्वॉल्व है, you cannot waive that, because it is not your right, it is the public which is going to suffer. तो public interest suffer हो रहा है, we will not allow it to be waived like this. I think this was क्योंकि एपीलेट ने वेवल के बेसिस पर उनके फेवर में किया था ना, कि वो तो कह रहे हैं सारे वेव कर रहे हैं। दिस इज व्हाट द सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑर्डर सेज, इट इज दस क्लियर दैट इफ देयर इज एनी एलिमेंट ऑफ पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट इन्वॉल्व्ड, द कोर्ट विल स्टेप इन टू थ्वार्ट दैट वेवर विच मे बी कॉन्ट्ररी टू सच पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट। कहता है अगर कोई पार्टी अगेंस्ट द पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट किसी चीज को वेव ऑफ करती है, कहता कोर्ट हम रोकेंगे। इट इज दस क्लियर दैट इफ देयर इज एनी एलिमेंट ऑफ पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट इन्वॉल्व्ड, द कोर्ट विल स्टेप इन टू थ्वार्ट एनी वेवर विच मे बी कॉन्ट्ररी टू द पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट। ऑन द फैक्ट्स ऑफ द जस्टिस नारीमान है, ग्रेट मैन। On the facts of this case, it is clear that the moment electricity tariff gets affected, the consumer interest comes in and public interest gets affected. तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने टोटली इन आवर फेवर कर दिया, और उसके बाद nobody could challenge it or overturn it in any court. तो उस जजमेंट, ये जो जजमेंट है 2016 की, इसके बेसिस पे ऑल दी पीपल, ऑल दी यू सी दिस अराउंड 3700 मेगावाट्स, दे आर गेटिंग एट 1 रुपी 19 पैसा। क्यों पहले दो जो साल थे वो इट वॉज 69 एंड 70 पैसा, और उसके बाद 130, टोटल मिला के 1 रुपये 19 पैसा था। तो दिस फेलो अनिल अंबानी ट्राइड टू हैव दैट शॉर्टकट कि जो अनकमीशन यूनिट के थ्रू मैं टैरिफ ले जाऊं, वो हुआ नहीं। एंड वन मोर पॉइंट, इसमें सुप्रीम कोर्ट आस्क्ड द स्टेट्स कि अगर ये जैसे ये कह रहा है, व्हाट वी विल लूज इफ वी अलाउ इट, They said 1000 crores. This is a part of the judgment. What the states have said, we are informed that if the commercial operation date is said to be on 31st March as has been held by the appellate tribunal, the consumers would have to pay a sum of over 1000 crores, being the differential tariff that would apply. So this was the question the Supreme Court asked the consumers, means the state electricity boards, and this is their reply, हमें तो 1000 करोड़ का loss होगा. So this is, I have to only point out that when private parties are involved, they can go to any length to do jugglery, corruption for their profit. So this is just that test you see case. Okay, when that final hearing of this Sasan case was being held in the Supreme Court, we as the appellants were there along with our advocate वही दिल्ली वाला and others, और इन्होंने कर रखा था चिदम्बरम, कपिल सिब्बल, पता नहीं कितने बड़े बड़े एडवोकेट कर रखे थे. तो वो सारी जब हियरिंग हो गई तो व्हेन वी केम आउट, ये एक्चुअली वी हैव हर्ड इट आवरसेल्व्स, जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट से बाहर आके हम जब वापस जा रहे थे तो सम पीपल टोल्ड आवर एडवोकेट कि साहब देखो इन्होंने तो बहुत बड़े बड़े वकील कर रखे हैं, तो हम तो केस वैसे ही हार जाएंगे. देखो मीनिंग के यू मतलब with big advocates you can get any judgment. So our advocate replied, forget it, भूल जाओ. He said कि जितनी knowledge और experience और wisdom इस सुप्रीम कोर्ट जज नारीमन में है, हम सारे मिला के भी ना, we are still far behind. वो इतना ग्रेट जज है, वो अनर्थ होने नहीं देगा. ही सेड ओपनली, भूल जाओ कि वो बड़े बड़े वकील होंगे. कहता है ये जज ऐसा है, ही विल नॉट स्पेयर. तो दैट इज हाउ वी गॉट दैट जजमेंट. नाउ फ्रेंड्स, दिस इज वन केस ऑफ दिस शासन विच वॉज डिसाइडेड, which shows. Now I would like to give some other aspects for your consideration. As I said, there are two channels for tariff determination. Two channels. One is cost plus basis. Second is competitive bidding basis. ये जो शासन वाला था और मुंद्रा वाला था, they were all competitive bidding basis. और एक्चुअली हुआ क्या कि जो प्राइवेट लोगों की मैं वर्किंग के बारे बता रहा हूँ, 4 प्रोजेक्ट थे जिन पे बिड वॉज कॉल्ड. वन वॉज अवॉर्डेड टू शासन, अनिल अंबानी, अदर वॉज टू टाटा मुंद्रा. बाकी 2 जो थे ना वो भाग ही गए. यू जस्ट इमेजिन, उन्होंने देखा कि ये तो बड़ा मुश्किल काम है, इधर बिड डाल के दिस सिंपली रन अवे. यू सी दिस अनिल अंबानी जो शासन का जिसका बिड मिला था, he was awarded कृष्णापट्टनम, आंध्रा कोस्टल. कहता मैं तो करता ही नहीं, आई विल अबंडन द प्रोजेक्ट. कहता कैसे नहीं करेगा, तूने बिड डाला है, हाउ यू कैन रिफ्यूज इट. दे सेड कि यू एट दैट पॉइंट यू गिव मी ए रिटन अंडरटेकिंग कि जो भी कॉस्ट एस्केलेशन होगी यू विल ऑटोमेटिकली अलाउ. वी सेड व्हाट द हेल इज दिस. जो बिल्डिंग कंडीशन है उसके हिसाब से तो बात कर. हाउ यू कैन आस्क अस टू गिव इन राइटिंग कि यू विल अलाउ एनी कॉस्ट जो ऑलरेडी जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट में चल रहा है उसको आप कहते हो मैं हम लिख कर दे दें तुम्हें. सो नेट रिजल्ट वाज जो 4000 मेगावाट का प्रोजेक्ट हमें अंडर एबीसी किसी को जाता बिडिंग पर और कंट्री को तो पावर मिलती ना, इसने बिड डाल के भागने से वो सारा प्रोजेक्ट ही अबंडन हो गया. दिस इज द कंट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ अनिल अंबानी रिलायंस. एक प्रोजेक्ट 4000 मेगावाट को बिड डाल के तो भाग रहा और वो प्रोजेक्ट बाद में बिडिंग होती नहीं. सेकंड, तिलैया इज इन झारखंड. तिलैया झारखंड में क्या हुआ, इट वॉज एवरीवन नोज इट इज द कोल माइनिंग एरिया. तो उधर अगर कोई प्रोजेक्ट, उधर तो कोई रिस्क वाली बात थी नहीं, उधर भी इसने यही कहा कि इट वॉज लोएस्ट बिड वॉज ऑफ अनिल अंबानी. ही सेड मैं नहीं करता, मेरे पास इतने फाइनेंसेस नहीं है. और तूने बिड काहे को डाला फिर? सो दिस इज हाउ द प्राइवेट, एक प्रोजेक्ट लेकर 2 प्रोजेक्ट उसने खड्डे में डाल दिया, वो कभी आए ही नहीं. सो दिस मच ऑफ कोर्स वी एक्नॉलेज के it is due to the bid of Sasan that we were getting the power. We are still getting the power at 1 rupee 19 paisa. आजकल की डेट में it is because he has put the bid, he has to give it, he cannot run away from it. But 2 प्रोजेक्ट जो उसको मिले थे वो भाग गया, अबैंडन कर दिए और आज तक उनकी कंस्ट्रक्शन ही नहीं हुई. So this is how the private people act. Now some other aspects I would like to put forward, that the Electricity Act 2003, ये ना आप एक किस्म का जिसको बोलते हैं ना बाइबल की तरह, बिकॉज दैट इज द लॉ ऑफ द कंट्री. लॉ कानून है, जो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी के ऊपर कानून है, that is what is contained in the Electricity Act 2003. ये चीज़ बेसिक समझने वाली है. You people are all working in power sector, that for you the Bible, क्योंकि जब तक वो चेंज नहीं होता कानून है वो तो. So this is to be adopted, and उसमें जो मेन एक जो कानून वाली बात है, सेक्शन 63. सेक्शन 63 सेज कि अगर कोई प्रोजेक्ट कॉम्पिटिटिव बिडिंग में अवार्ड होता है एज पर द गाइडलाइंस इशूड बाय द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, देन दैट टैरिफ विच इज डिस्कवर्ड हैज टू बी अडॉप्टेड. सो अदर इज ऑफ कोर्स जो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बोर्ड्स का जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन टैरिफ के लिए, दैट इज द कॉस्ट प्लस. दे आर द इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. फॉर एग्जांपल अगर हम पंजाब में हम अपने स्टेट रेगुलेटर पंजाब स्टेट इलेक्ट्रिसिटी रेगुलेटरी कमीशन में, व्हाट वी हैव टू डू इज ऑन बाय 30th November every year we have to file our tariff petition before the Punjab State Electricity Regulatory Commission and tell the commission that this is our expenditure, and according to this you please allow us the tariff so that we can cover that expenditure जो भी हो. तो that is under the cost plus principle of section 62. So these are the two opposing clauses, 63 competitive, 62 cost plus. तो ये जो अभी प्रोजेक्ट्स की बात कर रहा था थर्मल प्लांट्स की, दैट इज अंडर 63 कॉम्पिटिटिव बिडिंग. एनीवे, तो हमारे जो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बोर्ड के जो टैरिफ्स होते हैं they are decided on cost plus basis. 30th November the tariff petition has to reach the state regulator office कि this is the tariff petition of पंजाब स्टेट पावर कॉरपोरेशन, और वो उसको फिर जो भी अपनी उसकी फिर कॉस्ट एग्जामिनेशन होती है, कॉस्ट देखते हैं भी रीजनेबल है, वट एवर इट इज़. सो दैट हैज़ टू बी डिसाइडेड बाय 31st March of the coming year, so that they get the consumer tariff which covers their cost. तो बेसिक जो ऑब्जेक्टिव होता है, टू मीट योर कॉस्ट विदाउट रनिंग इनटू लॉस. तो इस चीज़ के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में there are 2 or 3 other documents I would like to point out. In fact, Electricity Act 2003 शुरू में ही gives a provision of section 3, और ये मैं समझता हूँ बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट है. सो वी मस्ट ट्राई टू एनालाइज इट. ओके, अभी ओके, सो वी कैन ब्रेक फॉर टी एंड देन रीअसेंबल हियर. ऑल राइट. Okay.